hold on.
Oh, hold it.
Hold it.
My name is Luigi Buttino. I was born in Gloversville, right in the house that I live in now. I got out of school in '42, graduated. I went in September to enlist. They called me in the Coast Guard. They called me in November to get sworn in, and I was in January 7th, 1943. I went to basic training at Manhattan Beach, and then from there, I was there 6 weeks. Then I went to Port Security for another 6 weeks, which was captain of the port, and was based in Brooklyn, New York, at the foot of Columbia Street. And from there, I operated out of there, and that's when I was pounding the port security on this Pier 33. We had to go through a regular stretcher of checking all the fire equipment, all the implements of war, and we could tell what the implements of war were because they were wooden boxes with a blue stripe around. You had to fill out your report. You had to check your fire equipment on the pier because there was a sabotaging doing. They were taking the nozzles off and putting a golf ball in there and then putting the nozzles back on the holes, and you had to check them for razor blade cuts because all the holes on the standpipe systems were all accordion. And then you have to check and make sure that they were all what they call a dry system, and the pressure was on them, air, and then when you did go to a fire, you did not turn the nozzle to the fire but away from the fire so you wouldn't blow that cold air that was in on the lines until you got water. So this one day there was a Norwegian ship in '33 and they were getting ready to pull out, and I went aboard and the fellows were taking their cigarettes and throwing them out the porthole. So I said, geez, fellas, don't do that. I said, so anyway, the ship pulled out, and about a couple hours later, I noticed there was a fire burning on the string piece. So we were taught not to fight the fire, but go and turn in the alarm and then fight the fire, because if you start to fight the fire, it gets out of hand, then you go to turn in the alarm. So I done that. I come back and I was fighting the fire on the string piece until the fire department come there. And then they kept the fire from getting underneath the pier, but the whole string piece was afire. So I had it knocked down pretty good, and this captain in the fire department come over and took my name, serial number, and what I worked on. He says, and you'll hear from me. So about 2 weeks later, we were standing inspection before we went out on our duty, and this chief boatswain's mate called my name, serial number, front and center. I said, now what the hell did I do? And this ensign, that's when he presented me with this one thing. So then from there, they sent me on to Brooklyn Navy Yard Fire School. And they had a replica of a ship on the dock there. They would put that oil into it and touch it off with gasoline and let it burn. And we were trained to go in and fight that with aerofoam and high velocity fog. So from there, then I got transferred aboard the CG 55024F. That was a fireboat, which was fire, damage, salvage, and rescue. And so from there, I was temporarily transferred to the 1162F. Temporary. Well, in the meantime, they had a fire call to a ship burning off the Jersey coast. So I went out with that ship on it, and I got a citation from that from going down below with all dressed up with our foul weather gear and this artificial lungs that we had to breathe. And we got the fire out with high velocity fog and foam. And then another time aboard the 55024F that I was aboard. That's the one I can't find the citation for, but there was this ship burning, getting ready to shape up on a convoy out by Ambrose Light, There was a fire, and we pulled alongside of it, and they thought, gee, it's a funny thing. The crew has abandoned the ship. So this fellow from Cohoes and I went aboard. They used to call him the Jocker because he was a boss man in the Ringling Brother Barnum and Bailey Circus, and that's what they called him. Him and I were teamed up, so the skipper says, get dressed up. He said, go down aboard to fight that fire. So him and I go down, we would get the fire out. Come to find out, it was cargo netting that was smoldering away. Well, this Navy commander come alongside with a speedboat. Said, you get it out, boys? Oh, yes. He says, you know what it was? Oh, yeah, cargo netting. He said, it's a good thing you thought it was cargo netting. He said, the next compartment was right full of dynamite. I said, it was? If you'd have saw a little Italian run across the water, I'd have made it right across the Jersey without stopping. But now we got on, and then they got the crew back together aboard the ship. But otherwise, we had several little incidents of fires in that.
Now, they were mostly sabotage?
We were, at one time, you see, aboard ship fires is a funny thing. If you pump 5 gallons of water in, you got to pump 5 gallons out, because see, that's what happened to the Normandy. And we laid side of the Normandy for about 2 months, because they had about 40 or 50 of these electric welding machines aboard these barges, and that was a Navy school of underwater welding at Pier 88, New York, because we was tied at Pier 90 embarkation, and Pier 92 was a Navy base. And they welded all of those portholes shut underwater. See what happened? The New York City Fire Department, when that was sabotaged, they just kept pumping water in, and they never think about pumping it out. But we used to have to, any ship fire that we went to, if we couldn't put a draft up over, they would cut a hole in the side, run their suction sleeves in, because you can't only pick up 23 feet out of vacuum. And we would suck out all the water that we pumped in. And that's what happened to the Normandy, that they pumped enough water and she just rolled over on its side and laid right there. And the Navy had made a good school for welding underwater, but they salvaged it and they brought it to Bayonne, and I guess they scrapped it. And then I had a brother that was 2 years younger than me, older than me. He went through the African campaign, the Salerno campaign, the Anzio campaign, and never got a scratch on him. He comes home, wasn't home a year, and he wound up with a heart condition, and the valves in his heart were thrown off, blood clots, and today they would have kept him alive, but back in them days, and he died, it was 34 years old.
So what do you think your most memorable time was in the Coast Guard?
Oh, gee, we've had a lot of them, Joe. There were little incidents. You see, you would get a lot of them in the wintertime, because each one of these piers had what they call night guards, and they were all old men. And they wanted to be nice and neat. They would have paper on a table, and they have their hot plate there, and they'd make coffee, or they'd fall asleep, and you'd get a fire. So we had to do the most of them. But otherwise, it's constantly on the go, and you never got a night's sleep.
I noticed that you've got some pictures with you. Would you like to share those with us?
Yeah. Well,
Now, what's that picture of?
this is the fire and salvage and damage boat that I was on.
Now, how long were you on that ship?
About 3 years.
Mm-hmm. How about your other picture of, what's that one?
This is a picture of me taken in 1943. I had hair them days too. Is that good enough, Frank?
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you can see this one. That's the picture of the crew that I was on with the 55-024F.
Now those big nozzles behind you, are those the big spray nozzles that you
Them is,
put the fires out with?
Deck monitors, we call them. But you see, you had to be tied up to use them, or otherwise, by the time you wouldn't, they would spin your boat right around because the volume of pressure on them. And these are some of the photographs of some of when we were practicing with the aerofoam and the high velocity fog. You see, we never used solid straight streams of water because try to keep the least possible water going into a ship as possible. See, we had we had 6 centrifugal pumps for water. We had 2 Chrysler engines for welding and cutting. So see, a lot of times you'd have to come up alongside a ship and you'd have to cut a hole in the side to put your suction sleeve in to suck your water out as well as your pump. Then when you got through, you had to take that hole, and we had pieces of plate put over and weld that hole back over solid again.
What do you think your most enjoyable time was?
The most enjoyable time is when I stuck my neck out. We got transferred down to a place called Leonardo, New Jersey. That's a pier going 3.5 miles out in the ocean. And all the ships that come in the harbor had to unload their munitions there before they go in the harbor. When they come back out, and they used to load ammunition. And I said, boy, this is going to be nice. It's spring of the year coming, I'm a little ways from Atlantic City, I'm going to have a ball. So I volunteered for 3 more months in the service. Figure I'm going to go down to Atlantic City. Nothing ever happened. When it comes May 7th, they says, you've got to get yourself out of here. So I figured I was going to have it made, because I couldn't afford them days to go down and spend time in Atlantic City. But there was, like I say, we were out. And one of the greatest things, we could never complain, we get dispatched by radio. And one time I said, God, this is an awful rough sea. They said, that's all right, boys. You gotta go out, but you don't have to come back. And we had nothing but wooden, these were all wooden converted ships. Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming in.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
All right.
Anything?
We really appreciate it.